Hello, it's Nadine here, and I'm here with this week's episode of Life, Health, and the Universe. And this episode is a first because I'm pretty excited to have a panel of guests with me today to talk about a topic which I think is really interesting, really important for us women to know more about. And I want to hear from real life people about their experiences. So I'm super grateful to have Suellen and Angela and Andrea joining me today. I'm not going with surnames. We can put that in the notes. So we're talking about intermittent fasting. So let me give you a little backstory. I do intermittent fasting myself, and I kind of recommend it to my clients to a degree. We talk about it. You know, it's all about, for me, it's all about experimenting, understanding how your body works and what your own personal experience is when it comes to trying different things. But I think there's a lot of bad press out there about it. And I believe that it has a lot of health benefits. So I thought, look, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to ask the question, is anyone out there doing it too? What have your experiences been? Would you be open to coming here on the podcast and sharing those experiences? And so we're opening up the conversation today about intermittent fasting. Now, all of us are doing slightly different things and have slightly different outlooks. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from each of you. I'm going to stop rattling on and I'm going to hand over. So let's have a quick intro. Maybe if each of you just we'll start with Suellen, then we'll go Angela and Andrea, because that's how I see you on my screen. Just give me a quick intro of who you are and what you're doing when it comes to intermittent fasting, just as you did when you kind of posted in the comments when I put this out there on the socials. Suellen.
Okay, I'm Suellen. So I'm pretty new to the whole intermittent fasting. I've tried it before, but I think you're going to discuss that a little bit later, and I'll talk about my experiences then. So I'm probably about 6 weeks into this new protocol or this new trial of intermittent fasting. And so I'm in my 60s. I was recently, not recently, 5 years ago, I actually was diagnosed with breast cancer. So I've been on a hormone blocker. And I think a combination of the hormone blocker, change in lifestyle, probably emotional stuff that comes with the whole breast cancer thing. I put on a lot of weight in a short period of time. And since the diagnosis, I've found it quite difficult to get off. And it's affected my sleep. I've had side effects from the drugs, which included joint pain. And so the whole thing cascaded. Nadine knows the whole story. She's kind of been on the journey with me. But I guess it's like everything I've tried before to feel better, both emotionally and physically, wasn't working anymore. And I thought, well, I need something else. I need to try something else for my long-term health. So I think that's when Nadine introduced me to somebody called Dr. Mindy Pearce, who talks about intermittent fasting for women. And I think that's where a lot of things are missed. A lot of intermittent fasting protocols are very male-oriented. So I read a bit more, dove a little bit deeper, and I thought, well, it's worth a try. So again, I'm very new to this. I'm kind of taking it slowly, and I'm really just measuring how things are going by scale goals, I guess, or measurements, but also non-scale or non-measurement related benefits. And so far, so good, but it's very, very early days. So that's where I am at the moment.
Great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Angela, you've got a different perspective because you also work with women through menopause. You've been a guest on the podcast before talking about all things female cycles. So yeah, it'd be great to hear your perspective as well. Welcome.
Okay. So thanks for having me.
But you've got your own experience, right? You've got your own experience.
Yes. So my name's Angela Counsel. I've been a naturopath for 20 years. I am a menopause coach, and I'm also a personalised health coach. And as a naturopath for many, many years, I used to tell my clients, oh, you need to be eating 5 meals a day, because that's what I was taught. And we used to kind of be, keto diet, 5 meals a day, don't go hungry, because you go hungry, basically it's going to slow your metabolism down, blah, blah, blah. Did that for many, many, many years. And then I learned about personalized health. And this is about understanding our different body shapes, the way our bodies work, our genetics, our epigenetics, and started to realize that, hey, that actually wasn't necessarily so. And also at this time, I was also coming through my menopause transition, and I'd started to put on weight. Very, very common for women as they come through this time of life. And what I used to do wasn't working anymore. So, I struggled to stick to a keto diet. The weight just kept coming on, and I was trying everything. And I had other symptoms as well, hot flushes, joint pain, things like that. So I was looking for a solution. And when I found personalized health, it was like the missing piece. And I started to realize that we are all different. And me having 5 meals a day was not actually the best option for me based on my body type, what we call our health type, my genetics, my epigenetics, where I was in my stage of life. So I actually shifted that. And I started with going down to 3 meals a day to start with. And then I went to 2 meals a day. And whilst I don't follow an intermittent fasting protocol, like it's strictly these hours and things like that, because I'm a bit more relaxed about it. Most nights I don't eat dinner, and I have a later breakfast in the morning. So I generally, and once again, understanding my body, I know the best times for me to eat. So my breakfast is later, and it's only a smaller meal, and my biggest meal is lunchtime. And I will skip dinner sometimes, because that works for my body. And doing that, basically, I was able to drop 24 kilos. Wow. But not just drop the weight. I got stronger, my symptoms disappeared. And now obviously I coach women in this, but I'm also very, very careful in that intermittent fasting isn't for everyone. There are specific health types that need to be eating 5 meals a day. And this is where understanding the genetics behind someone and what stage of life they're in and everything else that's going on for them. It's like, I think we have to be really careful that intermittent fasting is not for everyone. It's for many women, but other women it doesn't work for. And we really need to understand how bodies work. And this then becomes very intuitive, that when you're really in tune with your body, you actually know. Because a body that needs to eat 5 times a day will get hangry if they don't eat. And there's no point them trying to do intermittent fasting, because they will fail. But then a body that's designed to have less meals because their digestive system works slower, and that's what some bodies' digestive system works a lot slower, they can actually get off fine with 2 meals a day. And they don't need to be eating as often. So I think we've got to really understand that it works great for me, but it may not work for everyone. It's like everyone is different.
I think we'll clarify some things. Let's talk to Andrea. Thanks for that, Angela. But about that meal timing and that sort of thing, and how many meals a day, and like the difference between time restricted eating and intermittent fasting. Just some of those things, because there are some things that can work across the board, but I guess those like increased periods of fasting might not work for some people, but there might still be some benefits for, like, doing a 12 and 12 where you have that window, right? Andrea, welcome.
Welcome to
You're
me. Thank you.
Life, Health, and the Universe virgin.
I am.
The other two have both been guests before, so
great. Well, here I am. Awesome. I was excited about coming on. Everything that I share comes from my personal journey. I'm in no way, shape, or form a health expert. I'm an accountant, so right outside of that. I think I've always been really passionate about my health, but also from the space of human potential, being better, being faster, fitter, stronger, whatever that might look like for me personally. So every time the word biohacking comes up, I'm intrigued and I'm looking at it, and I'm understanding more about the human body, about neuroscience and all of the things. So like my journey's taken me on those paths, but initially I think it was probably the work of Michael Mosley in whatever the books were that came out at that time that introduced me to this concept initially. And then from there, it's just sort of evolved as I've learned more. So right here and now, I follow a full carnivore diet, and that was introduced to me by a flow state coach that I have. And I was just like completely thrown by it, going, that can't be a good thing. And especially since I had a pantry full of a certain protein shake that I won't name, that I'd invested a lot of money in. So I was kind of like, yeah, but I'm just about to start this regime, and what you're telling me is this. He said, just try it. And so I tried it, and I couldn't fault the increased energy, the increased mental clarity that I had. And so I follow a very high fat diet combined with animal products. I really enjoy my bulletproof coffees. So for me, intermittent fasting is having bulletproof coffees first thing in the morning and again at about midday. I've got one right now. And then with the view of eating something high fat and some protein anywhere between 4 and 7 o'clock. And that's pretty much my day. But yeah, in a nutshell, I don't know whether that answered your question, but that's me.
Wow, great. I've definitely been intrigued with the carnivore diet. I do know, like, when I don't know if I'd go the full kit and caboodle, like, full time, but I definitely wouldn't mind trying it out. I think that if you do have high quality protein, you don't need a whole bunch of it to feel really satisfied and really full. I can kind of see Angela going, where's your veggies?
I bet, yes.
But yeah, so I'll be curious to talk more to you guys about all of the things. You've given us a really great intro, so I would like to just go back to what Angela said. So there are so many different protocols with intermittent fasting, and I think that this also goes back to what Suellen was saying as well, and what she's currently practicing. So Suellen's following some protocols from Dr. Mindy Peltz, who's just released a book recently called Fast Like a Girl. So she talks about fasting, but going with your cycle. So there are periods where you absolutely don't fast, and then there are periods where you're going to get some benefits from fasting. But for a woman in menopause, that looks slightly different. So that's where Suellen's coming from, but she's still kind of working from a feminine side of things rather than that masculine side of things. So that's one type of protocol, right? So we hear about the 16-8, we hear about the 5-2, the Michael Mosley, where it's like you fast for a couple of days a week. But then when Angela has these, women with different genetic profiles who fasting doesn't work for, because, if they're looking to lose weight, for example, or if they get hangry, it's still, I believe, important to have that window of the 12-12, which kind of works with our circadian rhythm, right? So for a lot of people, they're not doing a 12-12. So a 12-12 is where you eat within a 12-hour window and you fast for a 12-hour window. And so you could have your 5 meals a day within that, right? But you wouldn't want to be ideally, we don't want to go outside of that window, because we do need our body to rest and repair.
Totally agree. Yeah. And this is a mistake that I see many women making, is the late night snacks after dinner. Yeah. And it's like, if you can just pull that late night snack out after dinner, because you really don't need it. Your body's ready to rest, your body, and digest your food. But if you're sitting there, particularly, it tends to be the sugary thing, a bit of chocolate, ice cream, glass of wine. And it's like your fast isn't over until that last thing. So I just generally, with that, because I'm coming from the health space and coaching people as well, is that it's like, have it with your dinner or have it straight after dinner, and then Yeah, because we don't want to spike insulin, and particularly for older women, women who are coming through that menopause transition, they are more likely to be insulin resistant. That's one of the reasons they put on weight, is because of the insulin resistance. And if you're spiking late at night, basically all of that is just being stored as fat.
Yeah.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, Angela, because like, I have a science degree and I've been training with Nadine for years. We talk about health all the time, and I've had a lot of interest in health, and I've been off and on yo-yo diets for like forever, right? And the one thing, and the common thought is, oh, women of our age, like menopause, postmenopausal, you put on weight because you're less active and you're less whatever, and your metabolism slows. But no one, until I read this book, has ever said, as you go into menopause, you get more insulin resistance. And it was like, now I get it. Okay, there's actually a physiological reason. It's not just, oh, well, you're getting old and you're getting fat and you're getting lazy, which is really it's blaming women for
it's gaslighting.
That's what happens. Yes, it is. And so, so it's interesting that you mentioned that. And I think it's really important for women going through menopause or postmenopausal to understand that your body is just different and it is insulin resistant, and you've got to do something to manage that.
Yeah, and if they could do it before they came to this stage of life, it would make a difference. Because what pushes women more into that insulin resistant state, yes, the estrogen comes down and that we lose the protection of the hormone. And so that's when women come in. But it's because they've come into this time of life generally not that healthy. They're not, they're drinking too much, they're eating too much sugar. If they come into this stage of life with really healthy insulin levels, the drop in estrogen is not going to have that much of an impact. It's like ideally we prepare before this. And if I could speak to every 30-year-old woman and tell them that they can actually get ready for menopause, that would be fantastic, because then we wouldn't have all these issues. But most of them say, I don't want to hear about it. That's going to happen in a long time, and it's actually not that long a time.
One of the things, and Andrea, like we're all in different times of life. Well, Angela and Suellen, sounds like you're similar. I'm in the middle, perimenopause. Hello, and I would assume that you're not there yet, Andrea. So
I'm not sure. I've hinted at maybe there. I'm 44 at the moment.
Okay.
So
well, you look pretty youthful.
Thank you.
Must be doing some right things. I got you for about 35. So yeah.
Oh, I'll take it.
Yeah. So you could be edging towards it, definitely. But it's quite interesting that you can use intermittent fasting as a really useful tool, as you said, and it's because of that, the way that when we do intermittent fast, it can actually help to improve our insulin sensitivity.
Yeah, so we're less insulin resistant.
Less insulin resistant, which and it can push our estrogen up, especially when we're in perimenopause, I believe. During those fasted states,
estrogen, as estrogen comes down, insulin resistance comes up. So estrogen is a protection. So it protects us against insulin resistance. Now, you can still get insulin resistance when you're still cycling, but it protects you against insulin resistance. So as the insulin comes down, any underlying issues will start to come to the fore. Yeah, cool. I think that it's I'm just going to kind of talk about some of the other benefits of intermittent fasting, okay? And I don't actually think that you'll disagree with any of this, Angela. I'm not here to disagree with you, because I use it and it works it works for me.
But I love hearing different people's experiences and perspectives. But like, sometimes in the health space, things can get heated, but I don't think they will with us. We're pretty much on the same page. So some of the many benefits, because mainstream media, right? So much of what we hear is about body image. It's about weight loss. It's about fad diets. And I feel like intermittent fasting has been put in a bucket with all of those things. And so for many women, they're going to go, well, should I try it? And the way that they might think that they have to do it is by reducing their calorie intake. Don't have to do that. So we can get into that a bit. Yeah, it's been given a bit of a bad rap, but there are all of these amazing benefits that go with it. We've mentioned like hormonal balance, right? So you also don't get those menopause symptoms. My little girl's just walked in. She'll learn all about this one day.
Never too early.
Never too early. Yeah, and like I have never needed to lose weight. Winnie, can you close the door, please? Never needed to lose weight. So people might look at me and go, well, why do you need to do it, right? But it's not about that. Close the door, please. But that is one of the benefits that you can experience. You can experience a change in your body weight, a reduction in body fat, but there are a whole bunch of other experiences. Sorry, the little bit of distraction there. I've just started homeschooling in the last few weeks, so there's always a risk of
good luck to you.
Small child invention.
I take my hat off to you.
It's been all right, actually. So far, so good. So it can promote metabolism, metabolic health, as that kind of insulin resistance and what Angela was talking about kind of comes into that, and our metabolic flexibility. It can help us to be able to process carbohydrates better if we're not having them all the time, if we're fasting in and out. It can help with repair. So if we're giving our bodies time to time away from consuming food, we can actually give it time to rest and repair. It can reduce inflammation, balance our hormones, as I've mentioned, increase our energy. Andrea's mentioned that she's got super duper energy. Our immune function can be boosted, and really that's a side effect of giving your body enough time to not be digesting food all the time, right? So it actually has time to heal. It can have gut healing potential. There's a thing called autophagy, which is like that getting rid of old cells that aren't really any good and helping us produce new cells, which obviously is going to help to improve longevity. There's a whole bunch of benefits, and that's why I kind of recommend it. But the key one for so many people is that they are in a position like Suellen, where, or even you, Angela, where you're like, this isn't working anymore. What I have been doing isn't working, or I feel like I've tried so many other things. Where am I going with this?
Well, I want to pick up on something you said earlier.
Yep.
I think one of the issues, and it comes from what people think it's a diet.
Yes.
And particularly some of us of a certain vintage grew up in the dieting culture. And so, yeah, we did. We grew up in the dieting culture, low fat, low this, low this, low this. And so intermittent fasting is seen as a diet as opposed to, and I think, and I like the term time restricted eating better than intermittent fasting, because it's a lifestyle, but it shouldn't be a hard lifestyle, because if it's right for you, your body will actually thrive on it. And if, not eating at nighttime is good for everyone. No one should be getting up at 11 o'clock at night and having a midnight snack. It's not good for anybody, because we're supposed to be taking that time to rest. It's when our body, as you said, all these things happen. Our body detoxes, our body repairs, all this stuff happens. So, but I think when we in this diet mentality, people see it as restriction, and that it's got to be hard.
Yes.
And I'm going to do it for 3 weeks, and then if it's too hard and I can't do it, I'm going to give up on it, as opposed to, how can I make this part of my life? It just becomes, and it is about listening to your body. Many of us are so disconnected from our bodies, it's not funny. It's like, just have your dinner and that's it. It just becomes your lifestyle, that you don't sit in front of the television eating chocolate, drinking red wine, whatever that is. But if on occasion you go out and you eat late at night, well, okay, that's fine. That's part of your lifestyle. It's not what you do every night. So I think that's probably part of the problem, is people see it as a diet that's strict, and particularly, and that's what I said when I say, when is that, it's got to be this many hours and this many hours, and it gets this real strict protocol. And I think that's what doesn't work. It's just relaxing into it. And, if there's if sometimes I have an earlier breakfast.
Yes,
That's fine. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I know I'm going out hiking and I need the energy to get me going. But it's not, I don't beat myself up about it. It's like, okay, well, I'm going hiking at 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, I better have something because otherwise I'm going to pass out in 2 hours. So I think that's where we've kind of got to change the view of what it is.
I'd love to hear. I agree.
Barrier.
Go, Suellen.
I think one of the barriers, or it's almost like a conditioning, and maybe it comes from where Angela and I, like the times that we grew up with, but you were drummed into having 3 meals a day, and breakfast is the most important meal of the day. So there's an awful lot of conditioning that you have to kind of unpick as you go through this, because it's like, well, I'm not going to eat 1 or 2 meals a day. Like, I'm going to be hungry. Well, a little bit of hunger actually doesn't kill you. And to what Andrea was saying earlier, one of the things I've found is increased mental clarity and increased energy. And I thought that was counterintuitive, that I would be sluggish and hungry all the time and irritable, and I'm not. I feel a lot more clearer mentally. My moods have stabilized, and in a short space of time. So it's very surprising to me. And and I have more energy. I used to get the classic 3-4 o'clock slump. I don't really get that anymore, and I don't feel exhausted at any particular point in the day. So so I think you have to overcome some preconditioning, which is all the complicated reasons why we've got to that point about the 3 meals a day, probably from the food companies. I don't remember where it comes from.
It actually came from the Industrial Revolution.
That's true. Yeah.
A lot of stuff came from there, including the education system.
Yeah, but it's when we moved off the farms and into the factories. And factories they were running to a time, and they wanted everyone to be the same. So breakfast was at the same time, lunch, and then dinner. And that's where it all came from. So much stuff came from that.
Yeah.
That moving us off the farms and away from our food into manufacturing. And then obviously over the years we went into manufactured food as well. And now our life runs based on what they set up in the Industrial Revolution. And it hasn't really changed. A lot of stuff hasn't changed. Schooling for one of them.
Yes, exactly. That's where I'm at with that. Andrea, I'd love to hear from you, because you haven't said very much yet, because we haven't given you the chance. Let's do it. So I want to know all of the things, like you've sort of given us a bit of an overview of what your day looks like. I'd like to know, like, how long have you been doing this for? And I know that you've said that you're really into biohacking, which is definitely something that I feel that's kind of the path I go down. I'm like, I'm going to try this to see what happens, and see how I feel. And again, going back to what Angela said, it's about connecting with your body and how you feel, and making some decisions around that. What has your experience been like? How long have you been following this protocol? Do you notice any changes in your hormones? How flexible are you? Like, because we've talked about, being too rigid, and I wouldn't actually mind getting back into that rigidity, because I know that I can have a little bit of a tendency to stick to the rules. So tell us all of the things.
All of the things. Yes, no worries.
Take your pick.
I think one of the things that excites me, and I refer to it as a way of eating, and look, they interchangeably, it's intermittent fasting and the carnivore diet, sort of one and the same for me. So I'll use those interchangeably. This idea that we can completely replenish ourselves over a period of time. So the longest that I've fasted for has been 48 hours. And at the end of this month, I will do 72 hours. So the idea being that it completely replenishes all of the things. So I get excited about that. There's also an element of like working with a coach, that the self-mastery that can come with surfing the urge of the need to eat, or the the stories in our heads, basically, if that is for some people. Look, this is the way that I think about it from that perspective. One thing I did notice in the early days of doing this, I've always eaten quite a healthy diet, always been sort of lower carbs, not necessarily consciously, it was just the way I ate. I recognised that my blood sugar would get low and I would get that whole shaky, hangry feeling, which, you know, is alleviated by eating more food, but then I'm left with it again in a couple of hours. We're talking 10 years ago now. And yeah, I have a fast metabolism. So people are like, oh, you don't put on weight, you know, you can maintain your weight. But I wasn't feeling my best self, and those fluctuations were impacting me. So for me, it's a sustained energy that I'm looking for. It's the long game, and like the long game during the day, and also the long game, you know, over the next 50 years or whatever it is I managed to get. So there's very much a focus on those two indicators. To be completely vulnerable and honest, over the last probably 12 months, I've struggled to stay on this regime as I knew it prior to that. I'm an all or nothing person. So I'm either all in, and right now I'm all in. Just so happens I can speak openly about it being this way right now.
Yeah.
But there's certainly, you know, times where I've gone, F this, I'm not doing it, or just going, I'll do it tomorrow. So it's a combination of those things. I'm not sure where I was going. Ask me something else.
Hormones. Do you notice any fluctuations, like in your hunger? Because one of the things that I notice, I'm a personal trainer and lifestyle coach, and one of the things I noticed in my own personal experience is, and I know, like, for many years I just thought there was something wrong with me, but now I notice, like, at certain parts of my cycle I'm not as strong. Yep. And at certain parts of my cycle, I'm hungrier, right?
Yep.
At certain parts of my cycle, I can make decisions. I'm like, nah, I don't want the thing. And at certain parts of my cycle, I'm like, give me all of the things.
Yeah.
Do you get that, being on a carnivore diet?
100% do.
What do you do? Because often I feel like I want more carbohydrate. I want like 10 bananas.
And whether or not that's, you know, validated and it should be that way or not, I 100% agree with you. When I learnt just recently through someone that was teaching my daughter about the seasons of the female cycle, mind-blowing for me. Had never heard of the concept before. Oh my God, I get this now.
Yeah.
I use a Whoop fitness tracker.
Yep.
And I know when my period is coming. I'm 28 days on the knocker, and that's just how that goes. But I can absolutely appreciate the differences that are happening in my body. There's nothing too extreme or symptomatic that need me to adjust anything, but it's a level of awareness where I am the observer, I guess.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. What was I going to ask you? I was going to mention, I do think that going trying these things out, and I think Angela's touched on it as well. It is a bit of, and I know that it is an experience, an emotional experience, or a personal journey. And Suellen, I know that that's been something that you've experienced as well. Because, and I'm keen to hear about some of the stuff that does come up, right, when you do those longer fasts, because I know that we all have, you know, the inner critic, the voice that tells us, go on, you can do it tomorrow, like you mentioned. We all have those things, and there is some power in being able to be the observer and overcome those things. And I do think that, like, a lot of this stuff about food can come down to that. Let's talk about that.
You go, girl.
I reckon we've all got.
You mean by trying?
Well, like, you know, I think that we live in a world where it's like, do this and you'll get this result, but there's all of this stuff that's going on inside your head. And so,
are you happy? You're happy for me to share on this? I think I've got something that's useful and quite vulnerable.
Okay.
So for me, the eating part of it, I've never struggled with restraint with eating, and this is something that I don't find as challenging as some. So For me, it is a committed exercise. However, I'm backing that up with the fact that I struggle with certain addictions of other things that are not food related that very much impact me. And the stories in my head are more around those. Okay. So I flex my ability to be able to, not eat the junk food. And I get credit for that. But in the background, my inner critic's going, yeah, well, what about the tablets that you probably shouldn't be taking, or the, nicotine spray, which is what it was for me, that I'm, using that as a crutch. Okay. So I can 100% see how people that struggle with the food and the emotions that come around that can fall into that trap. And I get it. I think that's where you were going. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And I guess with the intermittent fasting piece, like how when you are in those longer fasts, how that can sometimes really expose those feelings.
Yeah, it's interesting. The first 24 hours is the toughest. The first 12 hours is the toughest.
Okay.
Once you get, in my experience, once you get past that 24 hours, like it's actually not that much difference. Yeah. I think you guys, if you haven't already done it, you'd be surprised how well you would cope with it. It's not what it seems.
I think also too is there's the social aspect about other people eating, so if you're in the same household, you're either preparing meals for somebody or other people around you are eating. And, for me, breakfast is not an issue. It's more to do with lunch and especially dinner. So I've done, I think since I've started this 24-hour fast, and my fasts aren't like super strict, right? I'll have a little bit of cream in my coffee. If I'm really hungry, I'll have some nut butter just to take the edge off it. So I'm not, because I'm new to this, I just want to see how my body responds. But it's the social aspect of other people eating around you, and then think, well, why aren't you eating? Aren't you starving your body? And all the conditioning that I talked about before is that if you're not eating, you're slowing your metabolism, yada, yada, yada. So there's always that voice in the background that goes, are you really doing the right thing? Everybody else is eating. Why aren't you eating? And aren't you missing out? So while I'm trying to maintain a low carb meal and diet, I'm not super restrictive either, particularly in this early stage when I just, I do want it to be a lifestyle. I don't want it to feel like a punishment or a burden or a, super restriction. But there's always that little voice goes, you've tried everything else, this is probably not going to work either, kind of like, why are you bothering? But in terms of just the eating, it's really the conditioning about missing meals and feeling maybe a little bit hungry, just getting over that, really getting used to that feeling.
And I should probably add that when I talk about the fast that I do, both on an intermittent daily basis and also for these longer ones, it is not without my bulletproof coffee that has a massive amount of butter and MCT oil in it. So I'm probably consuming just as many calories as someone else that is eating all of the things. So let's not be martyring around this. For me, it's absolutely supported by that, and I couldn't do it without that.
Yeah, cool. And do you mentioned that you have a coach? Does your coach kind of guide you? Okay, this is the time we're going to do it. Do you take time off work or anything like that? Like retreat from work a little bit when you do those longer fasts?
No. Look, and his advice is, and it's just been a challenge that he set recently. But before that, it'd be, why don't you do this? It's probably time for you to consider doing this kind of thing. The thing is, you are so actually hyper productive during that time.
Right.
You actually don't have this, don't need to think about eating, so you just get on with it. Not to mention that you're getting the benefits of the cognitive improvement. And when it comes to training, contrary to probably what people think that you wouldn't have the energy, it's actually just such a powerful exercise to train in that state, and you'd be surprised what you've got in the tank that's coming from somewhere else. So to answer your question, yes, it's fully supported and probably led me down this path with the coach that I have. Yep.
Yeah, great.
And just to pick up on a point that Andrea made just very quickly is that, one of the advantages is you're not thinking about eating all the time. So you've got all this spare time, right? Where you're not actually either eating or preparing to eat, or, you know, so that's quite freeing, really.
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes the decision fatigue away.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh,
Yes.
I had a really good question and I've forgotten it. Can't have been that
Oh,
good.
sorry, Nadine. That's my fault.
It will come back. Angela, what do you think? Just like I sort of touched on hang on. I think it came back. I think it's okay. Yes, it did come back. And then I'm still going to come back to this question. But I just wanted to say that I think it's important to understand that everyone's experience is different, right? And that we are all making a choice. And we're choosing it because it feels good for us. And we're experiencing benefits. One thing I would also like to point out with intermittent fasting is you always have control. If you go, Andrea, Suellen, I'm going to do a 24-hour fast, and you get to 20 hours and you're like, oh, I can't do it. You're the one who chooses. There ain't no one that's going to hold you down and force you to do it. You're always in control. And I think that can be one of the mental challenges, because you do have those voices that are saying, go on, you don't want to be doing this any longer. And so I think that is part of where that empowerment can come from as well, where it's like, well, actually I can choose this. I can do it, and I can listen to what's going on in my body, and I can observe what thoughts I'm having in my head, and I am in control. I think that that's a really important point to make, that we're not kind of saying you have to do it. We're just
we're not a victim. We're not a victim, are we? Yeah.
No. And I encourage people, if they are interested in trying it, try it. It's not easy. So it's not like you're all of a sudden going to go hungry, because if the urge to eat is strong enough, you're going to eat. Right.
And you're not a failure because you do it.
No, it's all a learning process.
Because you've listened to your body.
Yeah, totally. I just wanted to go back, Angela, to the that whole kind of emotional part of it. And it's not specifically intermittent fasting focused, but I think that intermittent fasting can bring stuff up for people because of that connection with food and that kind of like fear of, I'm going to go without. Do you come across that? Yeah, I'm going to die. Like, this is my thing. What do you mean I can't eat?
Well, yes, but the thing is, the fear is actually different for everybody. This is once again understanding the different health types and how they're all different, because some people they'll be, and Suellen mentioned it before, it's like for them the loss is going to be the loss of connection of that eating with others. For other people, it's going to be, oh my God, if I don't eat, there's not enough. I'm starving, all of that. Someone else will say, oh, if I don't eat, I don't have enough energy. So understanding that, and because this is also what we do in personalized health, because our brains all work differently and we all have different triggers and we all have different priorities. So the emotions that come up, someone will say, I'm not good enough. Someone will say, I'm a failure. Someone will say there's not enough, because we're all different. And it's all, the stories are going to be different for everybody. And before you said, oh, sometimes I think I'm really, really strict. I keep it strict. But that's how your brain probably works. It likes the structure.
Yes.
So when it's got the structure, it feels safe. Someone else, a different health type, give them structure and they say, oh my God, this is so boring.
Rules.
That's right. And so the health type that I am is, whilst I like structure, I'm also pretty grounded and don't get too hung up on the detail. So I don't worry too much about the detail, but I do like the structure. So I eat the same foods just about every single day and same time. So that's the structure. But I don't want to know the detail that someone says I've got to fast from this hour to this hour. It's like, for me, that doesn't work. But for you, maybe being told that this, between this hour and this hour, is right for you, and you'll kind of stick to that because that's how your brain feels safe. Someone else it'll be more about, well, can I spend time with people? How am I going to spend time with people if I'm not eating what they are? So it is very much about understanding that we're all different and we all have different motivations. And yes, we have the baggage that we've come with from our childhood, the reward for food and all of that type of stuff, the punishment. Certain foods are a punishment, other foods are a reward. We've got all that, and we've still got to get through all that crap as well, which is why I do a lot of emotional healing as part of my program, because we do need to deal with that. We've got to deal with some of that hidden stuff that we're not even aware of, what we've been taught. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Yeah, I was taught that too. I used to teach that to my clients. That's a load of bull for some people. For some people, yeah, it is the most important. But for others, they can go without. So it's kind of being open that whatever you've kind of grown up with may not be the truth, and more than likely isn't the truth, and that we're all going to respond differently. And it's very rarely is it about food. Very rarely is it about food. There's something else, whether or not it's, do you have space? Do you have connection? Or do you have movement? The food is not the highest priority for any health type. Yet we all focus on the food. And really, if we could get the rest of the things in our lives in order, food becomes a lot easier, but we put the priority on food.
Yeah.
I don't know if I answered your question, but I did.
No, it was good. I like that. I think the time I was also eat all of the time kind of a gal, and even in the last 20 years that I've been working in the health and fitness industry, the way that I've eaten has changed, based on what the diet, the diet of the day was, kind of low GI, low carb, more protein, like more meals, snacks, blah, blah, less snacks. And the time, I thought, even a couple of years ago, I thought my husband did an intermittent fast. I was like, what the hell are you doing that for? It just sounds ridiculous. So you come to these things in your own time, right? But one of the things that I've noticed, like when we talk about that conditioning that we have as children and growing up, is when you have children or you see children and they just eat when they're hungry. And sometimes they wake up in the morning and they don't want anything. You realize how much you condition them.
Yes.
Because you get so fixated on when are they going to eat?
Yep.
What's their meal time, and trying to structure their meal times. It becomes a real thing, right? So that they start to fit into that time frame.
Yeah, and I've had this conversation with people, with mothers before. It's like, someone says, "Oh, my child doesn't like to eat meals, but they'll graze all day." I said, fine, let them listen to their body, because their body wants to graze, but their other child wants to have, eat and be. Yes, we train children out of being intuitive to their body, because it doesn't suit us to actually have a kitchen open all the time, or it works so much better if everybody ate at the same time and everyone ate the same food. That would be so much easier for all of us. But so that's how we bring children up. That's how we were brought up. But it's overriding, and that's why so many women, men probably as well, but women are very disconnected from their bodies. And they don't, when you say, we'll try this, it's like it's not natural to them, because they don't know how to listen to their body. You say, well, what is your body telling you? I don't know. What do you mean, what my body telling me? And that's part of it, that we've turned that off when we're younger. But we can try some of these things, and then we go, oh, actually, I feel better when I eat like this. And that's when you're listening to your body. But, if there's still stuff going on, even though it's the best diet, for the year, and you're still struggling with whatever, whether it's the way you feel or, weight, whatever, then it's not right for you. But we've got to really tap back into what our body wants, because it will always tell us, but we just don't know how to listen. Yeah,
absolutely. I was talking to a client who's got a teenage daughter, and she's like, she doesn't eat all day. And then she gets in the car and she hasn't eaten her lunch, and she just eats all of her lunch. And and I'm like, don't beat it out of her. because she's going to spend her 30s and 40s and 50s trying to fix it if you retrain
really
her to eat all the time.
Yeah, I know this stuff. And my daughter, she was the same. She wasn't eating anything until nighttime. I'm going, you've got to eat, you can't go to, and then I'm going, hang on, what the hell are you saying? Why are you saying this? But it was a natural reaction. You've got to have breakfast every morning before you go to school. And she says, no, but I'm not hungry. And then, yeah, she'd be eating junk at school. But once again, it's like she wasn't hungry to be eating first thing in the morning. And I started saying, you've got it before you go to school. And I said, oh, hang on a minute. No, she's actually the same health type as me. She doesn't actually need to be eating first thing in the morning. But it is just a natural reaction to just go into it. And I actually had to, and I still, I don't now because she doesn't live at home. But for a long time, I had to check myself that every time I kind of went, hang on, no, she's the same health type as you. She doesn't need to eat breakfast in the morning. It's fine. She can eat it in the middle of the day. That's fine.
Yeah. And because we do, if we condition them, then like I said, we just end up they'll end up going through all of the things that we've had to try and figure out as adults as well.
And I think you've got to be prepared to experiment yourself and kind of what Angela was saying, and Nadine, the sort of things that you teach is just do an experiment and look at the results or listen to your body and then decide whether it's right for you. Because even though we're talking about this topic, intermittent fasting, I don't think anybody who intermittent fasts, I don't think what they do is the same as somebody else's.
No.
Whether that's their food choices or the times that suit them, or how often they choose to extend their fast. I think all those things have to fit into your own lifestyle and just how you feel. So as I said, I've done a 24-hour fast, but people talk about a 36-hour fast. And I'm kind of like, well, I'm just not ready for that. Even though I really want to try it, I'm not quite ready for it yet. Let me get another 24 hours under my belt. That becomes comfortable. Then I'll try 36. But you just have to be prepared that it's going to look different from everybody else's.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that idea. We've mentioned it a couple of times, this idea that we're going to be missing out or going without, okay? Because intermittent fasting certainly doesn't do that. And I think that for a lot of people, when they do start intermittent fasting, you obviously, you might literally just be skipping a meal, right? So you'll naturally reduce the amount of food that you have. However, you don't have to. And I think that this is a really important point. So I'd love to hear even though you, like Angela, you have 2 meals a day, Andrea, 1 meal a day, plus your bulletproof coffee, which has lots of stuff in it, like lots of fats. Suellen, 2 meals a day or 3?
2 meals a day.
2 meals a day. And I'm about 2 meals a day, but I sometimes have a bit of a snacking in between, and I just have my sometimes I do without dinner, and sometimes I have dinner. But what does your food intake look like? Because it ain't like I say to people, if they're going to start intermittent fasting and they are going to reduce or have their breakfast later, the breakfast is going to need to be bigger. It's not like 1 egg.
No.
No way.
No, my lunch is massive. So I have stir fry every day for lunch, which is lots and lots of vegetables and some protein. Generally, it's whatever was left over from my husband's dinner the night before. But I have like a 12-inch fry pan, and it is full. And so it goes in a bowl. It's actually overflowing, and it is it is massive. And lunch is when I would add in anything extra. So if I wanted to have a treat like a piece of cake or something like that, I would add that to lunch because it's all kind of happening at the same time. I already know that my insulin levels are going to come up because I'm eating. I'll stick it in there. But I eat a lot there, and my breakfast is pretty big as well. It's not as big as lunch, but my breakfast is pretty big as well. And the big lunch will generally, unless I've done a really heavy hike in the afternoon, will generally get me all the way through. And I don't know if sometimes I might have a small bowl of vegetables or a little bit, at the moment, a little bit of soup, only because of the cold weather. I just want something a little bit warming, so I'm having a little bit of soup. But generally, the amount that I eat for lunch will get me all the way through, because I am full. And I do my exercise in the afternoon now too, because that's when I've just had all this food. I've got this energy. I can do my exercise in the afternoon, and I've got a lot more, I've obviously got all the energy from the food, and I can expend more. So I swap my exercise around too when I swap my food around. So all my exercise, apart from when I'm hiking, I have to do full day hikes. Obviously, I have to start in the morning, otherwise it's dark, and I want to hike in the dark. But generally, all my exercise is now in the afternoon as well.
What time do you have lunch?
Generally, it's nearly time, 1:32.
Okay. Yeah.
So around about that 2 o'clock mark.
Yeah.
And my breakfast is normally between 9 and 10. But I drink tea in the morning, so herb tea beforehand.
Yeah.
But and breakfast is a little bit later as well. So that 9, I don't start work before 10 a.m. So generally I will have breakfast just before I start work, and then so 9, then 2, and then if I did eat anything, it would probably be 5 or 6, but then nothing else again till the next day.
Yeah, cool. Andrea.
Yeah,
you mentioned what yours looks like.
Yeah, I did. I won't go over that again. I think what I will say about what I know to be true for me is that at any point in time during the day, or on the weekends or whatever, if I'm sort of dropping my guard a little bit, if I'm to eat any kind of, I want to call it carbs, but predominantly, the simple ones that are going to go through me, pasta, bread or something like that, I will be hungry within minutes and hours.
Yeah.
Like, it just does not sustain me. And when I had someone explain to me that we can have, one way of thinking about it is that we can have two sources of fuel for our body. So whether it be via carbohydrate in all the different forms that it comes, or it be by fat source. So I deliberately choose the fat source because it's so sustained, and so it's a clean energy for me. So right now I'm feeling a bit hungry, talking about all this food. For me, what I will go to now is maybe some cheese, or I've got some cans of tuna in there. So that will see me through till dinner, but I don't deprive myself. I just make choices that are in line with, this sustained thing. Because if I went and ate the cake that's sitting out there at the moment because I feel like it, in about half an hour's time, I'm going to be cranky. I'm going to be looking for more food, and I'm not going to be my best self.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. What did your dinner look like?
Mine?
Meat.
Yes.
Steak.
Again, yeah, like I
Steak and eggs.
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
So the bacon, the eggs. It depends what's at home. I just make people vomit sometimes when they see what I eat. But ground beef, and then I mix an egg and some cheese in with it, right?
Ooh, yeah.
So that's I like the I fillet steaks. They're expensive and there's probably not enough fat in them for me. But yeah, I did that the other day, and I had some people that were going, it's comfort food, it's great and cheaper. So yes, it looks like that. Something meat with more butter. I would eat a stick of butter a day with all my sauces.
Yeah, cool. Suellen, and I'll tell you why, even though it's not always the same.
So what I'm doing at the moment is fasting about 16 to 18 hours, 5 days a week. Then on a Saturday, I'll have 3 meals a day if I feel like it. So I'm not too super strict on what I eat. I try and keep it low fat, but if I feel like carbs, I'll have carbs. And I'm trying to eat, prioritize fat over protein and keep it low fat. So, and then on Sunday, I'll do a 24-hour. So that's what my week is looking like at the moment. And a bit like Angela, if I feel like something sweet, so I don't feel deprived, I'll try and do that at lunchtime. with my lunch meal, which would be either like a salad or vegetables and protein, something left over from the night before, some olives or some avocado for the fat. And I'll have that sweet thing with the lunch, not between meals. And then at night, I'm finding I still have a meal, but it's probably, I try and keep the portion smaller. One of the things that I'm finding, sort of embarking on this, is that I get that society satiation message a lot earlier. Like I recognize it earlier. It's like, oh, okay, I don't need like to finish this really, or I don't need a portion that's quite as big. But that's, and then the dinner meals are pretty similar, vegetables, protein of some kind, and trying to include fat in a dressing like olive oil or something like that.
Yeah, cool. I generally have 2 meals a day, as I said, sometimes snack in between. Ideally, if I didn't have young family, I would probably have my dinner around lunchtime, the same as Angela, or like 2:30, 3 o'clock, like, because I often feel kind of like ready to eat then, and then I have a snack, and then at dinner time I'm don't really feel hungry. So I think ideally that would be the case, but family dinner time is important for us at the moment. It's 2 small people, so I eat. And also that's just an extra meal and more time in the kitchen, right? If I'm having a meal at separate time. So I break my fast usually around anywhere between 9 a.m. and 11:30, depending on how I feel, where I am in my cycle. So sometimes it's shorter, sometimes a bit longer, and depending on when I'm working and stuff as well. I usually have eggs, like 2 or 3, no, probably 3 eggs, leftover veggies from the night before, and sometimes some meat if there's any left over from the night before, a banana and some nuts. And then I try not to snack on something that's just carbohydrate. Like I often do reach for a carbohydrate snack just because it's the easiest thing, another banana or some dried fruit or something like that. But ideally I'd have some nuts. We don't always have them available in the cupboard because when they're there, they get eaten. And then dinner, we're pretty basic dinner, around 5 o'clock, meat and 3 veg in some form, because everyone will eat some of that. So it's pretty basic. But yeah, that window can be anywhere from kind of like 13 hours probably to 18. And I have done a couple of longer fasts, 24 hours, just trying that out. But yeah, I guess my point, the point that I was making with that is like we're all eating, right? And I do eat a little bit of dark chocolate after a meal, sometimes, not like a whole block, but a couple of squares. But I do always make sure that it's straight after a meal and it's not like an extracurricular thing. So I don't think that we have to miss out. In fact, there have been plenty of studies done that show that if someone is eating through, a long period of time, let's say 16 hours of eating window, and they close that window to 12 hours, they can actually reduce their body weight just by closing the window. So this is not about taking in less food. It's about time restricted eating. It's just about bringing that window in. Yes, there are those benefits with longer fasts, but if we're looking at like it from a health perspective, just that simply closing that window can be a really great place to start, and you can still eat basically what you want in that window.
I'm finding too is that maybe it's probably just me. I'm thinking, well, if I'm only going to eat 2 meals a day and no snacking, I'm going to make them good meals. So I found that I am taking more time to think about and prepare food that is I'm really going to enjoy at those 2 meals. Whereas before, if I was eating the 3 meals a day and snacking, you start really reaching for those convenient things. Oh, I don't want to think about another meal today. What can we have? We'll have something with bread or something with toast or something that's just really quick and easy. But like I said, if it's only going to be 2 meals a day, then I'm going to make them good ones. So yeah, I take a lot more time preparing and planning dinner than I would normally.
Yeah, definitely.
I tend to cook in bulk so that we've got stuff on hand, but that's just something that I'm used to doing. So I'm not cooking every night. But yeah, cooking and thinking about food becomes a pleasure, actually.
Yes, yeah, you're absolutely right. And you kind of go, well, if I haven't eaten for 16 hours, I don't want to just have a piece of toast.
Yeah.
I want to have something that's gonna make me feel good, right? And it's going to replenish you and get you started in a good way. We're getting close to a close, but I wanted to talk just briefly about that. Angela mentioned earlier, hangry versus hungry, because I think there's a difference. What are your experiences with that? Do you know what I mean? And what do you think those differences are? Because I think people get worried, because my perspective is, I think people get worried about being hungry because they associate it with being hangry.
Yes, some health types do get hangry because they've got a faster metabolism.
Yes.
But I think generally in the Western world, we don't really know hunger. Because when we start to think we're hungry, we fill the gap. And quite often, we're not hungry for food. And I know this. When I sit here in front of the computer and then I go, because I drink tea and herb teas in pots, I need a break. So I go, I'll go and make another cup of tea. And I'll go to the kitchen and, I could get something out of the fridge. And sometimes if I've really been focusing, all I want is a break. And if I can catch myself and go, actually, what I really need is a break, I can just go outside, sit on the back deck, and I'm lucky. I'm surrounded by bush. I'm on 10 acres. I can just sit there and just breathe in nature for 5 minutes. And while the jug's boiling, I come back, I have my cup of tea, and I no longer need to eat.
You've forgotten it. Yeah.
I wasn't hungry for food. I was hungry for space. I was hungry for movement. And I think this is what sometimes we do. It could be that you're hungry for a connection. Maybe you just need to say hello to someone or just speak to them, or you're hungry. Some people are hungry for movement because they've been sitting in the one spot. And as we see with kids, are told to sit in the one spot and not move in class. And then that's when they kind of get antsy and everything. And they need to move. It's not that they're hungry, it's just they need to move. But we automatically associate this changing state with food.
Yes. Yeah.
Because as children, that's what we did. We moved, we got fed. We sat still, we got fed. We did this, we got fed. We just got fed. And that's what it is. Because so some health types do get hangry because they've got a faster metabolism. So they do need, and in that 12-hour period, or that that daytime period, they do need to eat every few hours. But other health types can go longer because they've got a slower metabolism and a longer gut, so they can go longer without without food. But I think the first thing we've got to look at is, what are we really hungry for?
I agree. I totally agree with that. And I've noticed, not with food, but today's the day. 500 days ago, I stopped drinking alcohol.
Yay!
But I've noticed behaviorally, there's it's the shift, right? So like, glass of wine's no longer there. There's social media, there's food, there's shopping, it's like, you're exactly right. It's like it's like that. There's this urge to kind of fill a space or change what you're doing. And so I totally agree. And I think that's a really good analogy. It's like a hunger for something. It's like a shift in energy or something like that. My personal experience, and I reckon that Andrea might be down with this as well, just from what you've mentioned already. My personal experience, difference between hungry and hangry for me is if I've had something that spiked my glucose and then it drops, and then I literally can feel myself get agitated, like physically sort of shaky. Whereas if I'm hungry, if I've eaten, a good meal that's had protein and fats and carbohydrates in it, and I've come from that state, like a feeling of hunger then is more just a slight feeling of emptiness. It's quite different physically for me.
Yeah.
And from what you've mentioned, Andrea, with the cake that you talked about just now, that's sitting in
it's
your
exactly the same. Yeah. It's that irritability. It's like you could literally see your hand shaking.
Yeah, and it's like, I need to eat. I need to eat.
I feel disjointed. Whereas right now I'm hungry, but I can tolerate that. It's just completely different. It's a blood sugar thing for sure.
Yeah, for me too. How about you, Suellen? Do you have anything to add on that with the hungry thing?
I'm just trying to think. Like, I feel hungry now, but it's more like just a background thing, probably because
we're talking about it.
Time, where I would break my fast. So it's kind of like a little bit like a distraction, but I mean, I know it's not going to kill me, and I still feel fine. I still feel mentally alert, and I still feel like quite even-tempered. I think the odd times that I have felt hangry without being able to kind of diagnose it too much is probably to do with maybe prioritizing carbohydrates, and then you do get some kind of like real slump. But yeah, I mean, since starting this, yes, I've felt hunger most days, but it's just something you kind of just learn to live with.
Yeah.
And I know that it's good to give my gut a rest and my body a rest from food. So it's not, it's not bothering me really. But yeah, the hangry thing, not too often, handful of times, and certainly not during this sort of period where I've re-embarked on intermittent fasting.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. All right. So I'm going to bring this to a close now. I would love to hear from each of you. You've been all wonderful, and I've really loved your contribution to this conversation, because I think it is an important conversation to have. It's important for women especially to understand that it is okay to embark on this if it's something they're interested in, but to know that you're doing it for the right reasons, right? It does have a whole bunch of benefits, and one of those can be weight loss, but it's not the only one. And I certainly don't think that should necessarily be the reason that you try it, but it could be, I suppose, if it's a healthy choice, right? What would you say to anyone, each of you, with your own experiences so far? What would your advice be to someone who was thinking about it or who wanted to know more about it? What would your advice be to them? Do your program, Angela.
Of course. Yes. Work out what health type you are, and then do the program, and you work that out. It becomes easy. It's my answer.
Thank you. Suellen.
I guess this is just because it's coming from my personal preference, but if you are a self-learner like I am, I would probably get, and you're female, I would probably get a book like Fast Like a Girl and maybe start there. Or it depends whether you've got any background in it at all. I guess the other thing is that to be aware that when you break your fast, break it with good quality food. I mentioned last time when I first did it, I actually just grabbed whatever was handy. I wasn't prepared for the food, the breaking my fast. So I was eating things like toast or a shake or something like that. And that just So it wasn't successful for me then, but now I go, okay, I need to have a meal with protein and with fat and, you know, with some vegetables. So if you're going to do it, be prepared to break the fast with good quality food, whatever that choice is that you make. And read a book or listen to some YouTube videos of people who know what they're talking about. There are plenty of really good people out there that are talking about the subject. So, and also experiment and find what works for you. And it's going to take time, like, you know, and start, as you said, Nadine, start small. If you want to go 12-12, because you can't, the thought of going 18 hours without food is too much, well, just start with restricting the times that you eat and kind of go from there. It doesn't have to be all at once either. It can be a gradual process.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Andrea.
Look, my advice would be that we're playing the long game here, and that we need to be able to adapt and pivot as needed over a period of time. It's a journey. I had a meeting with someone about a profiling thing earlier this week, and they indicated there's some studies to suggest that, you know, a lot of us will be working because we're able to until about 80, and that our life expectancy is, you know, well over 100. So for people probably younger than me, but up and coming. And so we need to think about what we're doing for the longevity of our bodies, I suppose, and make decisions in line with that, because we're so here and now at the moment, or we've just been led that way, that if we can start to set some goals for the future and what we can do now, because there's always tomorrow, but it just keeps evolving into tomorrow.
Yeah, great tips. I love that. I'm going 100 plus, but I'm not going to work till I'm 80.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I'm with you.
My recommendation always with the people I work with is have a look at what you're doing right now, because we don't actually know until we start paying attention, right? Get a pen and paper and write down what your current day looks like. When do you have your first coffee or breakfast? When do you have your last meal at night? What are you doing in between? Because sometimes we're eating for longer than we realize. And so, as Suellen said, it can be as simple as just starting by closing that window. But if we don't know where we're at, we don't know where to go. So personal observation is always a really, really good place to start. And yes, we can go all in. We can, you know, buy a program like Angela's, although hers is very personalized. So probably not the best example. You know, buy something online and it tells you to do the challenge, right? And you follow the protocol for 4 weeks or 6 weeks and you go all in. But if you're not really listening to your body, if you're just following an instruction manual and you don't really pay attention to what's going on, then you might end up back where you were. Whereas if you start paying attention to what's going on from the outset, then you're going to be able to be more aware of the changes. As I said before, it's always a choice. So like no one's forcing you into doing this, but we've all shared today our experiences, and it sounds like they've all been pretty positive. Like, and we're 4 people in a big world, but I hope that our experiences have given the listeners some insights. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really great. I've been wanting to have a panel of guests on for a while, so I'm super excited that you were able to join me today. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to sharing this podcast with the listeners. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thanks, Nadine. Thanks for having me.
No worries. Thanks for coming. Bye.